Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of ThinkerThemer. I'm Amy, the thinker. I'm all about mechanics, and this is my wonderful fiance Maggie, the themer, all about the theme or the story of a game. And together we review games from those two different perspectives, and often we don't agree on things, but you know, we try to keep it very civil for the purposes of the video. Now, you may notice that we're not in our studio. Where are we? We're at my mum's house for Christmas, and we've taken over her living room. Sorry, mum. So it's going to be a matter of every time someone wants to watch TV, we're packing up all of our gear.
Or they'll just have to watch around it.
Or maybe they get no TV. Today, we are reviewing Dune Imperium, which I'm super excited about. It's been pretty much the hotness for the end of 2020 with lots of rave reviews, and it's by Paul Dennen, who is famous for creating Clank. And Clank is a deck building game, and one of the most famous deck building games, and very well loved. And what Paul is doing here is integrating two mechanics: deck building, which obviously he's very familiar with, and worker placement, which is one of our most favorite mechanics.
Yeah.
I think collectively we just love worker placement games. We buy a lot of them. And we always like to see it implemented in new and different ways. And I also just want to add, before Maggie talks about the theme, is the fact that this is one of three of big games that have combined worker placement and deck building this year. So there's Dune Imperium, there's Endless Winter, which was on Kickstarter, but is coming out next year, and we're really looking forward to that. And the third one is the Lost Cities of Arnak.
So let's talk about the theme. Dune Imperium is based on, obviously, the book series Dune, and a lot of the elements are taken from the upcoming movie. You'll even see it in the artwork of the cards and the leaderboards that you get to use, that even specifically the actors have been used, or it's probably taken from screenshots from the movie. But in the world of Dune, or in this particular game, we are playing as the leaders of different houses. We're in a future far, far away. I think it's probably blasphemous to say that when it's out of context of the wrong universe. But in this future, everything is run by the melange, the spice that runs the world. It's a bit of a half drug, half thing that enables people to, be stronger, live longer, but also it enables time travel, and yeah, it essentially that's why you use it for one of the spacing guild. So when you're needing to travel and move your troops, it's very efficient for that, but it costs a lot of spice. So all we're trying to do is we are trying to, that spice, where do you get that spice? The desert planet of Dune. It's the only place where you can get it. So as you can imagine, there's going to be a very hotly contested area where there's going to be a little bit of fighting, a little bit of combating, a little bit of like tensions. So
that's is that what we're fighting over?
Yeah, like well, there you go. So so all we're going to be doing is we're going to be trying to like pull different levers, get influence with different factions or different areas that have different powers, or allow us to either get water so we can go to the desert, or help us deploy more workers, or move around, or spies and kind of get the gossip of what's happening, intelligence and those sorts of things, all with the view of getting victory points by winning combats and doing all these things. That means that we're essentially gaining control or having a good, powerful influence over the planet of Dune.
Can we talk about the artwork?
Let's talk about the artwork.
I mean, this has come up a lot already with this game, but it is fairly bare bones.
Yeah, so I would say it's very
functional.
It's very functional. It's very practical. It's very easy to grasp and understand. Like, it's very easy to then learn it and teach how all the elements kind of come together.
Is it thematic?
It's not immersive. Like, it doesn't transport me to this amazing kind of world that is obviously what comes through in all the stories. The artwork in the actual the leader cards, like essentially your player card, and the individual cards that you use throughout the game, that's quite good. That is, it's quite nice. They're like nice illustrations, but that's sort of the extent of it. The components themselves, the drop of water makes sense, makes thematic sense. The other elements are the money and the spice are really uninspiring.
That was uninspiring.
But apparently they're getting an upgrade and an update, and there's going to be even minis for the troops that we use as part of the combat. So,
who knows?
Watch
Stay
this space.
tuned. Yeah. So what you're trying to do in this game, obviously it is a deck builder. So everybody starts with a starter deck and you're trying to build that deck up to have more powerful cards that allow you to do more things on the board. Now, it's also a worker placement game. You have 2 workers in the beginning. You'll eventually, hopefully, have 3 workers. And all you're doing is moving them to a space on the board, paying what you need to pay in terms of a cost and getting the benefit for that space. Only 1 worker can go on each space at any given time. And so that's where the competition comes in terms of choosing those action spaces wisely. And the turn order really matters, of course, with all good Euro games. Now, what you're trying to ultimately achieve is you want to be the first one to get to 10 victory points in this game. So not hundreds of victory points,
No,
just
it's
10.
very tight
And
from a
it's,
point.
yeah, it's
point.
really hard to get victory points in this game. As soon as the first person gets 10, the end game is triggered. Or if we get through the conflict deck, which is a new card every round. And so it does have a built-in timer to end the game. And unless someone gets to those 10 victory points.
Yeah.
In every game that we've been playing at 4 players, and every game is ended with the 10 victory points before the end of the deck. Now, when we talk about artwork, what I really appreciate about this game is Paul is trying to do 2 ambitious things here by combining the worker placement and the deck building mechanics. But what makes that really easy is the iconography on the board. It is just brilliant. Once you understand what each of the icons mean, they are consistently used on both the board and the cards, and that makes it a really easy teach, like Maggie says. It helps with that. Also, all of the areas on the board are nicely color-coded, and those colors match the symbols that are on the cards. So it's really easy to quickly grasp what's going on. And we taught this to my younger brother and younger sister, and they got it straight away. Now, what I love about this game is on your turn, all you're doing is taking 5 cards from your deck, and then you're evaluating which one you want to play, but the cards have multiple uses.
Yeah.
So either you play the card and you do its action and you gain its benefit, or you leave it in your hand and at the end of your turn, you actually get to play all of the cards left in your hand to gain resources, but also the currency that you need to buy new cards to upgrade your deck of cards. So that is really clever because there's always that tension of what are you going to use the 5 cards in your hand to do.
Yeah.
The other really clever thing that I like about this game is this little zone here with the 2 swords through it, the combat zone, the combat zone, because at the end of each round, there is a conflict that goes on in this combat zone for everyone who's put troops of their color into the fight. And if you have the majority, you can get the first prize for whatever the conflict card says for that round. So in this case, it's a victory point. Second prize is a water drop. Third prize is a spice. And so you are constantly evaluating how many troops do I have in the fight, and some of the actions allow you to move troops in or to recruit more from your player board into the area where they can then be added into the fight. And the problem with this is that after the combat has taken place, after the conflict is resolved, whether you win or not, you lose all of those cubes. They go back to your player board. And so next round, you're going to have to recruit more troops. That is a really interesting thing going on because it's almost like a side game that you've got to be very wary of at the same time as building your deck and the same time as doing the worker placement actions. And a lot of the victory points actually come from winning in that conflict. But you could also win the conflict by having a sneaky intrigue card, because along the way you can take actions that provide you with one of these cards, and on these cards some of them have some sneaky bonus combat
It's like a lucky
points. Yeah, that's right. And so at the end of the game you might have a certain amount of power in the fight, but then you might reveal one of these cards, surprise, and win. And I kind of like that element of surprise.
You really do.
I really
you
do.
love that. She kept ambushing
oh,
the
you
rest
think
of
you're
it.
going to beat me? Well, no, I've got news for you.
Yeah.
And so I really liked that about the game.
You also seem to weirdly get all the combat cards because there's a mix of combat. They're not all combat. Like there's obviously end game stuff.
It was definitely the cards.
End game,
That's
plot
definitely
stuff.
why I
But
won.
then if you had like 3 cards, they were all combat, and then all of a sudden it's like you think you're there and you're really strong, and all of a sudden it's like a pee. It's like, oh, come on. But yeah. All right, but let's talk about theme integration next. This was something that like grew on me because at a glance, because I think the artwork was very functional, as we've said, I felt like it was more indicative rather than evocative. So it more kind of points to what you are meaning to or need to do, or what happens in this space, rather than like create that world and kind of immerse you or throw you into that space.
I think I said to you, I didn't know anything about Dune going in, and I still don't know anything about Dune.
And it actually, obviously, it's a whole series of books. It's an incredibly story-rich content that you've got. The board, I don't know if the board itself is going to get an upgrade, because it is a weird thing in that it's very functionally good.
Yeah,
like it's very easy to understand, it's easy to play it, but then you don't really feel like, it's the personal thing. There actually has been a lot of thought, I feel, put into the theme integration as to what actions you're taking to go here that lead there. Like, for example, the places where you get water, that makes sense. That what you spend the water on. If you're going into the desert, and then the more water you spend, the further into the desert or the longer you can be in there for, and then the more spice you're able to get. So all of that makes very good thematic sense. Same with like the area of like where the council, or kind of like the where all the political stuff happens. All of that, everything costs money, because you're kind of like putting money on the bribing people,
using
and that sort of
influence.
stuff, using your and then it gives you things like, it gives you influence, which you can then use to like buy more cards to put into your deck and all that sort of stuff. So it is actually more thematically well thought through than you get the sense at first
when you
glance.
look at the artwork.
But you do have to kind of like look for it. It doesn't make itself very obvious that there was actually obviously a fair bit of thought put into that.
I've got to say that I think the objective of combining worker placement with deck building has been successful here. It does really work. I think there are some issues that we had with the game. One is that deck cleaning, or
curating that deck.
Deck thinning was really difficult in this game. There are some actions that allow you to do it. There are some cards that allow you to do it. But because the game is actually over quite quickly, or it feels like you don't get enough momentum, it doesn't have that same satisfaction as, say, a Dominion, which is a game that we really love, one of our gateway games.
Yes, soft spot in my heart forevermore.
Yes. Or even Great Western Trail with the cows, where you get to thin out your deck so much that you're like, yes, I've nailed this, and I know exactly what's in here, and I know what's upcoming. I never got that sense in this game, even though the cards were really easy to understand and it all worked as it should. I felt like the game was weighted more towards worker placement than it was towards deck building.
Or at least that's how we were playing it.
But even my brother, who plays a lot of deck building games, he was like, this is quite difficult to actually optimize and win based on just kind of optimizing the deck. That might be something we're doing wrong, but it didn't feel that way to begin with. The other thing about this game is it's probably a lot lighter than what it appears, and for me it was it's a great like mid-weight game. To keep our interest, it might be a little too light, and it might be a little bit for us to keep it in our collection, it might be a little light, but I do appreciate that it's going to bring in people who are into worker placement or into deck building. Everyone can kind of get into it. It's really simple, easy to understand. The iconography is great. I can totally see this being a lot of people's favorite game for 2020. And Maggie, you've been playing it solo as well. Yeah.
So the way the solo works in this game is you're using an AI deck of cards, and obviously with a deck of cards, every time the AI has a turn, and this is one thing that I'm not super fond of. In this game, you have two AI, so it's two rivals that obviously, because the game kind of plays better with 3 players onwards, even at a 2-player count, which we haven't played it at a 2-player count.
But I wouldn't want to, because you've got to add an AI, and it's just like, well.
Yeah. So when you're playing solo, you're adding 2 AI. You're using the same deck. They all have fairly straightforward, almost like simplified versions, not almost like simplified versions of the actions that a rival would be taking. They're getting in the way. If you're playing solo, they can obviously very much beat you, and they can win combats, and they can frustrate your plans. The experience playing solo, for me, one of the issues that I often find when I'm playing against an AI, if that's the mode or the mechanism that the solo mode is using, is that I'll often forget, or it'll mess up with my own strategy, because it's like I'll get distracted when I'm trying to figure out, like, facilitate the turn of the AI. With this, there's double the issue with that, because I'm facilitating 2 other turns, and then when it comes to my turn again, I'm like, oh, what was I doing, or what was I? I have to say, it's still, from the gameplay experience, it still works in the sense that you still get to do the same things and try the same strategies and see how things play out. I've played with the app. There's a facilitator app as well. I was a little bit disappointed with it in the sense that I thought, because it's an app, like, you can do so many more exciting things. It really feels to me like it's just replacing the solo deck.
Yeah.
So you don't have
just
to
to
shuffle
save you
it.
shuffling.
Yeah, it saves you shuffling. The one thing that it also adds that is quite nice is it allows you to, it's got checkboxes for when a turn that the AI is taking has multiple steps, which I do really appreciate, because one of my biggest issues when I play solo is I don't know if I'm cheating without realizing, and I'll often get paranoid going, did I do that? Did I take that right thing, or did I not? So this does help with keeping track of that.
And the good thing is you actually beat solo. You haven't beaten me yet.
That's true. I got pretty chuffed with myself, because I did manage to beat solo at quite an expert level, just. And so I still don't know if I just cheated and didn't realize, because that's the other thing. Like, even though that app is kind of helping you with that, it's very basic. You still have to stay on top of everything else, even things that, get triggered for the rivals. So I kind of wish that it had more elements to help facilitate that. It's got a nice little ambient music, which is
Nice.
good. I still would prefer, it works well as a solo. I still much prefer it as a multiplayer experience. Yeah.
So, are we going to keep this game? I'm not sure that we are going to keep it. To be completely fair, it's not a theme that we're super into.
And we have to be very clear about that. It's
absolutely.
A big disclaimer. Sci-fi,
Huge.
fantasy, war, space stuff.
Yes.
It's not really our thing.
And I do feel like we've kind of explored most of what it has to offer at this point. I really do enjoy the design, though, and if anyone had this game set up and said, hey Amy, do you want to have a game of Dune Imperium? I would be absolutely, I can't wait to beat you. I do enjoy it. I like the efficiency puzzle. Like I said, it's a very solid mid-weight game. And I think a lot of people are going to love it. So I'm really happy that we did buy it and we did get to try it. It's a really good game. The one other thing that I wanted to mention was just the asymmetric powers of the different player boards. They're not that huge. So I actually prefer games that don't have asymmetric powers because I like everyone to start on an even kind of playing field. I know a lot of people like that. I would say that they don't guide the strategy as much as they were made out to be. Like, a lot of people have done, like, if you're playing with this character, use this strategy. I found that really the only thing that they do is in your starter pack, your starter cards, you have a signet ring, and they all have different powers associated with that one card. They also have an ongoing benefit or way that you can kind of break the game to give yourself a benefit. So there's really only those 2 things that change how you play the game.
They're not major.
And they are not major at all. In fact, so much so that I don't really care which character I play with because it's just like a very minor part of the rest of the game. So I would hope that, they breathe some more life into this, probably for people who do really love this game, because I hope that they would bring out, more character packs or different expansions. I could see that you're really building on from this, new cards in the deck. I think that they could really, kind of leverage the movie and bring in more things to do in this game quite easily. But in and of itself, it's a really nice package of different mechanics that I think anyone could get into. And
a smooth play experience.
Extremely smooth.
It never feels clunky. Never feels like, this is like
very
broken.
Streamlined.
Or like,
a little bit of AP, but mostly for me.
I've never found that. For me.
It was really fun, and we're glad we got to play Dune Imperium. Probably not our game of 2020, but one that is going to be many people's game of 2020, I suspect. So that's our review of Dune Imperium from the weirdness that is my mum's living room. If you enjoyed this review, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all those things. And talk to us in the comments. Have you played Dune Imperium? Did you like it? Let us know. We love chatting to you all. Thank you all for your ongoing support.
Yes.
And we will be back maybe even in 2020 with another game review soon. Ooh, maybe. Will we do it or won't we?
We'll see if we have time.
Happy
We'll try.
holidays, everybody.
Yes.
Bye. Bye.